Hi, everyone. Welcome to 70DU. It's super nice to have all of you guys here tonight. We're just going to wait for a couple more people to join us since it's not yet 6 o'clock, and then we'll start at 6:02. Thank you. For those of you who are just joining us, we are going to go ahead and wait until 6:02 to start, just for a few more people to show up. And while everyone is waiting, make sure you subscribe to our channels on WeChat, Facebook, Instagram, and Facebook. I'm going to put our registration links to all of our social media in the chat box right now. And then something else really exciting is next week we are going to be offering 3 free events that all of you are invited to. So the first one is after we realized that young K through 5 students don't get a lot of hands-on learning at home, we started the 70DU Fun Club, where we have a live session teaching your student anything from creating an exploding volcano to making slime or even going on a virtual field trip. And so next week, we're going to be teaching you how to make homemade butter on Wednesday and how to make your own lava lamp on Thursday. And then the other event that is probably more pertinent to some of you guys on this call right now, next weekend we will be having a college admissions live Q&A for older students like you guys, where parents and students will bring their questions to June and Dr. Yan, and they will be answering these questions and providing professional advice to all of you. So right now I'm going to send both registration links to all of the events to the chat box, so please feel free to sign up. And we'll get started in just a couple seconds. All right, looks like most of you are here. So welcome to 70DU's college admissions essays in 2020. Today we are super, super lucky to have both Clint and June here to teach this awesome class. So there will be a 15-minute Q&A session at the end, but this is also an interactive class, so feel free to ask questions when you have them. So I'm going to go ahead and give some introductions. So first up, we have Clint here with us today, who is a Harvard and Yale graduate. And Clint notably was one of the 100 Harvard college students who were selected for the Harvard Business Leadership Program in 2010. And ever since then, he's been working as a teacher, researcher, counselor, and principal. And many of his wonderful students have been accepted into elite programs such as Yale, Harvard, Stanford. The list goes on. So thank you, Clint, for being with us today. And then next up, we have our founder of 70DU, June Liu. She has an MBA in social entrepreneurship and a bachelor's in English. And June really is one of the pioneers of K-12 distance learning and has long understood that no two children learn the same way and that educators must have a personalized approach to teaching. And so through adaptive technology and tools, with personalized teaching philosophy, June and our wonderful team here at 70DU have guided 70DU students to achieving their potentials. And so without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Clint and June, and you guys can go ahead and start. June, I believe you might be muted.
Okay, hi. Can everybody hear me? Awesome. Okay. So thank you so much. And I'm so honored to invite Clint join me together to give today's seminar. And I know I have been asked to give the seminar like this long time ago, but our application season just started. And so we were busy choosing schools and brainstorming with different students and getting all the package down and the deadline milestones down. So it's quite a busy September, I would say. And October, actually, everything will be starting more intensive. That's why we want to chase this opportunity to have the chance to talk to everyone and share our experiences for past several months and also share the experience for the past several years because we want to benefit more students to make sure they know what is the common trick and they know how to get the right essay to represent themselves. This year is quite difficult, I would say. So a lot of students, they struggle their schools, they struggle with their lives, and so far we still don't know when we really can, literally go back to school physically. So I know this is really hard for many of you, but hang there because there's only less than 100 days left in 2020, and we believe next year will be better, right? Okay, so just to cherish hope and to cherish this chance. When it's come to college application, and actually there's many confusions, many rumors. A lot of people say, hey, can you just let us know, do we need to really take SAT or the test it blind or test optional become something serious? Or what do you think? Should you take it, not take it? And many of the students even ask me, oh, I spend a lot of energy preparing for SAT. Now I don't really have chance to take it. And does that affect my application? Well, I would say essay part is the most important part that you have to consider right now. And even you still have a chance or you still have the opportunity to take it, but that shouldn't be your priority. The most important thing is you really have to think about, what is your like situation and what is your background, what is your major, and what kind of story can put you into the competitive position. Like we all know, everything is optional, right? So score is optional and activity is optional and a lot of things are optional. But essay is not optional. Essay is something like you must write a story. You must find out how to present yourself. So storytelling has been a skill like very important for most of the people. But especially during the college application season, this has become a quite big challenge. Because when I talk with my students, I found like even they have, so many like activities or experiences, or even the students full of personalities, they still struggle for the essays, for the stories. Some of them they would like to tell stories like very like focusing on the academic part, and some of them have big ego. They really want to tell story to show how awesome they are, and some of them they just really feel like nothing is unique because for them they're quite humble and they feel like they must do something or they must have done something like amazingly huge in order to write something. Well, they are not either of them, they're true. The thing is like small story or small things might show the big personality, or the big things may not be good to represent who you are or you show your personality. So today we want to come up with some of the topics, but I know like you guys have many questions and I encourage everybody to ask. If you're a student, you're parents, well, I think the best way is to ask a student to join because you still have chance to grab your kids and to join the meeting. And even they are not application students, they still like, freshman, junior, and you still have chance to think about it. If they have never experienced anything related to frustration or drawback, probably you'd still have time to experience. At least you have to time to think about it, to prepare yourself, right? Okay, so today we're going to talk about a several stuff. The first one is how to identify what makes you unique, and how do I differentiate myself if I don't have any special experiences, and how to craft a story of yourself to present to administrations, those committees, and what exactly is essay development, and how to break out the typical essay structure and stand out. And last but not least, how to get out of the writer's block, and what makes good essay, and how do I tell if an essay is good. So actually, that is something that we are trying to figure out. Okay. All right. So before we started, I would like to give like 1 minute for everybody to write down your essay questions. You can write it down in the paper on the paper for yourself, or you can put it in the chat box, or you can privately message me because I want to see like the sum of the questions, or maybe they will add on some new questions and we could answer them together. All right. So you can close your eyes, think about what question you have, and this is a great opportunity for you to be answer your question like specifically for you. Awesome. All right, so let's start it. Hi, Clint.
Hi,
Okay, I just introduced you and introduced the topic that we're going to cover. And actually, I know it's like been a busy week. And how is everything?
it's going good. How about you?
Okay. Okay, so let's start it. And the first question, actually, we want to discuss about how to identify what makes you unique.
Okay, um, let me let me talk first about a certain bias that I want many of my students to overcome. I think that many of the top universities are biased against Asian students, and the way that they limit the amount of Asian students in their population is to give them lower personality scores. So my goal with all of my students is to help them raise their personality scores. And I think one key to remember when you're writing an essay, and a key to crafting your story in a way that's going to get your personality out there, is to think about every favorite movie that you've had or every favorite book. Think about the main character, and the most important part of the plot is how that main character changes. And so when you write an essay about yourself, you need to think about some time in your life that you changed, a transformational time where before this time you thought one way about something, and after this time you thought a different way about something. Before this time you acted a certain way, and after this time you acted a different way. Before this time you hung out with this group, but after this time you hung out with this group. Any sort of a story like that can be very powerful. So the first step is to think about transformational times in your life. And another good thing to think about is any passions that you have, any stories that inspired those passions. Sometimes those are transformational stories as well.
Awesome. That's really good idea. And the thing is, I feel like most of students, they really don't know what is called a unique. And some of the essay, I do feel like they're unique. And then they say, oh, no, that's not a good, that's pretty common. Some of the essay, I feel like, oh, that's pretty common, but students feel like that's unique. Let me take one example. I want to hear like your opinion. So for example, students really want to go for the like a bio direction. They want to, become a doctor in the future. And I would say 9 out of 10 essays is about someone died in their life that gave like, short moment. And then they start to be interested in, how to save people's life. They want to care, they want to save. That can end up like the essay. I mean, for the single essay, individual essay, that's pretty unique. But the thing is, like, if all the essays regarding to the same directions going for the same story, that's kind of like, affect the unique level, right?
Correct. You need some special angle to differentiate that kind of story. Now, if you focused in on a specific kind of disease or specific circumstances, or your reaction, perhaps maybe trying to your reaction with the community or your relationships, there's many different ways to make that story unique, but you do need to think of ways to make it stand out.
Okay, and for this year, I found like in the essay, a lot of students start to talk about the COVID-19. And this year's essay, I would say 9 out of 10 essays is about because of COVID-19, I start want to, go for the direction of the being a doctor, in the future for the bio direction. So that bring me a lot of concern, because before is like one same story every time, and at this time is like the same COVID-19 again. But about COVID-19, what is your suggestion? From what perspective we need to go into?
I think you need to just have an original take on it. So just COVID-19, if that inspires you to be a doctor, that's not as original. But if the the trends brought about by COVID-19 inspire you to think more about pod-based education, or an Uber style approach to education, because you've been doing this homeschooling and you have new ideas about it, something like that, where you can make an interesting new angle where you're still using COVID, but you're thinking of a different direction for it. Does that make sense?
Yes, that's good. I like your idea. The other one is like I get a question from my students. So how do I differentiate myself if I don't have any special experiences? So it's really hard. I have been working with the students for the past 2 weeks, and basically from their statement, there's nothing special happened in my life. What should I do?
Okay, now there's a good example from one of the Harvard admissions cases where they found an Asian student who had been given lower personality scores. And one of the things that they were asked was rank what you think that this student's openness to new ideas is. Let me find the precise language really quick. Openness to new ideas and new people. So if you don't have anything that you think is really flashy in your background, that's not exactly necessary. But if you can think of a story that demonstrates that you're open to new ideas and new people, that'll be very strong. And so while many people might not have, they might think that their background doesn't have enough things in it, but really when you start thinking about your personal relationships, there's a lot that you can find there. So think about all personal relationships, people that have influenced you, things like that.
I see. Okay. All right. So, and actually, I noticed like many students, they do have very special experiences, but they didn't realize that. So that's why when we do like the college prep, when there's like freshman or sophomore, and we do want them to try different activities and to do something. The purpose to do something is not trying to fill your resume. It's just trying to let you to have some, thinking process, and that's quite important. So do not really worry about the reward, like award, like competitions. If you don't really get or learn something, so that basically purely you have nothing to say and nothing to share. That's my opinion. So going through different
So
activities, doing all the volunteers, yeah.
also, based on what you just said, there's something. I have many students that will do competitions, or they will have certain hobbies that will have competitions involved. Like whether if they're into math, they might do math Olympiad or science Olympiad. Or if I had a student that was into Rubik's Cube, and they would do Rubik's Cube competitions. So when they write their essays, their first instinct is to talk about all the contests that they've won. And I don't think that that's bad, but I don't think that that's enough. It's not competitive. So whenever I have students like this, I always encourage them. You can talk about your rankings and your winnings and stuff, but the most important part of all these stories is going to be the relationships that you made in these activities. So if you can write an essay where if you want to talk about your contest results, that's fine, but always bring it back to relationships.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, I agree. So now it comes to the question from student: how to craft a story of yourself present to the administrations. For example, should I say my, weak points? Should I just to say only the good thing about myself? If I say the weak points of myself, should I, just only show a little bit, or what is the percentage? I don't want to be like negative. That's quite a lot of concern from the students. And I do notice it's really challenging for the teenagers to open their heart to present, who they are. to other people. I also have students, really struggle, don't really want to write anything because he's like, oh, that's only my personal stuff. I don't want to show anybody. How you deal with this?
Uh, well, there's there's different approaches. I think that when it comes to weaknesses, I think it's always advantageous to highlight times that you've overcome a weakness or a barrier. Those are always very strong essays. So anything that you thought that you were having trouble with, or that you academically or in sports or in other relationships, some way that you overcame that, that's always a great way to make a story out of that. And that's usually how I advise most of my students. If they're going to bring up weaknesses that show your skill at overcoming them, or show how they have influenced your perspective in a unique way, something like that.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so now I want you to, share with, the audience about your essay development. When you work on with students, usually what is the process? How the process look like for the essay development?
Okay, usually I try to talk to the students first. I need to find out what their passions and their goals are. And one thing that I want students to start thinking about is, what would you do if you got into your dream school? What would you do the moment that you graduate? What would be your first move, the first job that you want? And then once I get that answer, I like to ask them also, now what would be your first move? Now you've got that job, or you've had that job for 5 years. What would you do next? And I want students to start thinking about that. I want them to make bigger long-term goals and find certain passions or interests that they have right now and connect them to long-term goals, which could be hypothetical or they could be concrete. It doesn't really matter. It's the important part is to start allowing your brain to dream like that and think about what are your dreams. And once you can get a clearer picture in your mind, start trying to articulate it. And the people that can do this the best, they have the best essays, but usually they also go on to achieve really great things because it's all about being able to visualize what you want in your life.
Okay, so what is the biggest challenge for you, or what is like something you're scared about when you work on the different kind of students in the
Well,
past?
every student is unique, so it takes a lot to find the unique angle for each student. And some students, they don't realize what are the strong points. Many of my students want to highlight the wrong things, and so it just takes a lot of work with them to to find the best background aspects, and then to first you have to find the best things of their background to make stories with, and then the best way to tell the stories. So that's the main challenge.
Okay, so what about the students like they just don't have things to come up with? Usually, where you try to show them the different way, or how is the way? I would say like most students, if they have the content, for me that's quite easy. So we just comment on it, and they just change it, then they edit on it, then we just do the different round. That process is quite of like simple, and that's not the biggest. Challenge for us actually, and when we worked on together, but what about the students? They just, no matter what, there's like very little thing to squeeze out.
Usually for them, especially if they don't write themselves very much, I just keep asking them questions and I type everything that they say. And I just keep asking questions until we find something that I think is strong. And then usually by that point, I will have a strong paragraph because they've been talking to me on a point that they've become passionate about. So we'll have a strong paragraph and then we build from there. And usually, once I can get a student talking about something, it starts flowing. It's just a matter of finding the right topic.
Okay. For me, I feel like when it's like no content, and the best way is to, maybe the parents should join, sometimes we can get like more stories from the parents instead of students. For example, say sometimes they forgot something, and the parents might remind them like, hey, you did this before, and you used to reach out to
Mhm.
us and tell us like this and that. So that's something like I feel like parents may want to sit together instead of like
You can
only
have a
changing.
resume as well that they can, if parents will sit down with their students and make a brief resume of pretty much all their academic and other activities, and stuff that the parents think are strong. That always helps as well.
Yes, I agree. The other thing is like what for the essay questions, the prompts, they have like the different options for you to do, but they also have one option that's like saying like, oh, if you feel like all the questions or prompt don't really apply to you, you can write something else. So how big is the space that you think the student should go for that direction or go for the prompt?
I don't, I never care what the prompt is. I'm more focused on as long as the story shows some sort of transformation. So when I first start working with students, sometimes I tell them don't even worry about the prompts. Just find these stories in your own life that show some sort of personal transformation or overcoming obstacles, and then we'll fit them into the prompts later. But I think that's the most important part, is to have that compelling story that shows some sort of change, a before and after change.
Okay. All right. So the other one is how to get out of the writer's block.
How to get out of writer's block? I really think that really it helps to open up your mind and just start. Like I said, imagine that you were accepted into your dream school. Then what would you do? In the best possible world, if you got everything that you wanted, if you were accepted into your dream school, what would you do? If you had the top job that you wanted, what would you do? What would you want your children to say about you? What would you want your grandchildren to say about you? Things like that. Start thinking in a big picture way, and have fun with it. About what really makes you inspired. What would you really want to do if you could do anything? And once you can find something that you're enthusiastic about, it becomes so much easier, and it can be anything. And remember, when you write these, you're not going to have to stick. Like if you became really passionate about a certain major or topic, they're not going to force you to keep that the whole time. So you're free to really explore many possibilities with this. And so take that freedom and use it to just allow your mind to wander and see if you can find something that makes you enthusiastic or passionate. And then once you find that, you can work from there.
Yeah, let's put it in this way. Just the student have to be bold to know really what they want. Because if you know what you want, and that thing's better. But I do notice like many students, they have like different concerns. They feel like what they want may not be the best. They feel like what they want to do may not be having a bright future or promising, things like that. I feel like less concern and be bold, and that can help them to figure out some story to tell, at least to tell who they are. And that kind of like, if you figure out who you are, that's kind of like unique already. So now comes to the next question, is about what makes a good essay. What do I tell if an essay is good? I think that's quite challenging because sometimes we even have a disagreement, right? So the teacher A think about the essay, the first draft is good, and another counselor say is like another one is better. So we have a lot of like debating, and then we come up with the green light essay. So what is the standard from you?
Well, the thing is, for these essays, there really is no standard. You just have to find your own voice. So I just have to help every student find their own unique voice, and just try to get that across in a unique way, in a genuine way. And so many students, they might obsess over their writing style, and they might think, especially Asian students, and especially when I lived in China, the non-native speakers would worry about certain aspects of their writing style. But there, there's many things about writing styles that can make your writing style very unique. So uh, it's just a matter of trying to get your personality, trying to get a good personality across.
Okay, so I do notice like the experience that you were in China helped you a lot, but you didn't notice about like you mentioned like several times about the Asian students' personality. But I think that's quite like I kind of like disagree with that part because I do feel like a lot of Asian students, they have a lot of personalities, but they just don't know what is the right way to present them, or they are afraid of being judged, and they're afraid of just it's not like a good. I think there's like many things to bring the concern to them that cause the expressions kind of like limited. What do you think about that part?
Yeah, well, one easy way to think, I mean, is always trying to connect your interest or any sort of passions to the university. So in this respect, when I was in Central China, I was registered as an interviewer for Harvard, and I talked to a lot of the interviewers that were in my class that were now interviewers. And so we talked about what type of questions you would ask, and the funny thing is, it seems like many students don't prepare enough for this kind of thing. And preparing for a mock interview is very helpful also for your essays because basically you're going to be asked why Harvard or why any other top school. And the common way that people answer this, they'll say for Harvard or something, they'll say something like, "Well, it's got all the top professors," or it's just the top ranked." But it's always an answer that sounds like they haven't really done any research and they don't really have a passion. So if you find your passion and then you do a little bit of research about the school where you can find a professor that you like or a program that you like and you can connect it to something that you're interested in, that goes a very long way with these interviews and with there's usually supplemental essays for most of the top schools where they'll say specifically why this university. And so many of my students will start out with reasons that you could say about any university. This university is great because it has many top programs or an alumni network. What you need is a more specific reason and a reason that connects to your unique passions. So I would recommend if you have many different interests, one way would be just start browsing the top schools' websites and make sure you're looking at the options that are undergrad options because some of my students will accidentally get on graduates school pages and you don't want to be referencing graduate school classes in your essays. But if you can reference a few opportunities as an undergraduate that you can connect to your background, it's very powerful. And some of my students have even contacted professors and started communications. They've even gotten involved in labs or in research projects with the professors. If you find research that you like, you can often find the email of the professor. And another trick is if you find research where you can't download it, where it is, often you can only get the abstract. You can contact the professors and they'll send you the full paper. And also, that's a good way to establish communication with these professors. So I've had several students that will use their interest and their background and build some sort of connection like that, and it helps.
What personality you feel like attract you most?
Uh, Curious, open to new ideas, or people that can cross cultures, or people that I always love a personality that's um, crosses academic disciplines. Maybe like a person that's very strong in math, but they're also very interested in poetry, or somebody that is an engineering major, but they really also like art. I think crossing subjects is very cool, and also social groups. If you happen to be many of my Asian students in America usually end up being they have these interesting roles where they bring different groups of people at their school together, and those are often good stories too.
Awesome. Okay. All right. So now we have a question from the audience. One of the question is a personal essay, are you supposed to craft it is a novel or a story with as much detail as possible or as objective as possible and I use details sparingly?
I think the main details need to be about how you changed and so you need a few details to establish how you were before the change. And then you need to focus on how you are a different person because of whatever that you're talking about in the essay. And how you're a stronger person or you're a better candidate for university now because of what you're talking about. I think those are the kind of details that you really want. And the crux of the story is that the change, the moment that you transformed.
Okay. All right. So there's another question regarding to the essays. Okay. So what do you think, Clint, what do you think about using the same materials over and over again? For example, we wrote Common App and we wrote essays, we wrote different kind of essays, but some of the story, I just want to reuse them. For example, I write it in the Common App, but I want to reuse them in a essays. I want to use them in a different way. What do you think?
I've had some students successfully reuse a UC essay for the Common App. but you have to add more to it because the UCSAs are a little bit smaller, and so you wouldn't want to turn in a short Common App statement. But usually, you can add extra details sometimes to a UC uh, essay for your Common App, and there won't be any overlap because it's two different systems. Now, as for, maybe you wrote about a certain event in your Common App, and there's another supplemental question for that same university. Uh, and some students might want to write about the same activity, and there's different approaches to this. I've allowed certain students to do that as long as they're highlighting different aspects of the same activity. Maybe one essay was about a social aspect, and another essay was about a competition aspect or something like that. So it's those kinds of decisions.
Okay, awesome. So we have another question from the WeChat group. So actually, here's the question. Say, I want to expose my disadvantages and I want to show people how I conquer it. But my essay teachers say that's not a good enough. What do you think? I think this question is quite
Those
general.
are the kinds of stories that I like. So I think that's the right track. And if this student is unsure about it, I think just try to make it. Try to do your best to show how this shaped you. And but I think those are the perfect kind of stories. So um, I would be willing to help that student work on that.
All right, thank you so much. So now I want to have the different questions. There's a question. Okay, come up with a question. All right, I think I have three more questions, but I would choose the most common one. So my kids feel like their essays are already good enough, but I still worry about it because I feel like every college essay should at least add it at least 10 times or even more. And I hear so many struggle experience from other kids. What should I do? How should I convince my students, my kids, like they should try to edit their essay or rewrite their essay?
Well, I think that last season with my Asian students, the ones that were successful, we spent at least 2 hours together on each essay. Some of them needed a lot more, but it was at least 2 hours where we're going over and revising and stuff. But the students that put in that work, they were accepted into Stanford, Princeton, Yale, UC, UCLA, UC Berkeley, Oxford. I mean, all the top schools. But I think it does require uh, a few rounds. And if you talk to any writer, there's the first stage is just getting the material out, but then the editing stage is so important to really make a polished product.
I see. Okay. I think that's pretty helpful for the part. And for my suggestion for the situation like this is like the parents should find some expertise to check in and to ask it for opinion. And I know some of the parents they ask at least to 2 to 3 people to give the suggestions, feedbacks, right? To decide. But sometimes it's like too many opinion may not be the good way because you feel like that's good and he feel like it doesn't good it's not good and that feels like oh it's great, so it's really hard. So I know like one of my students they wrote down all the prompt and then they asked me to choose one which one is better, and I really appreciate the how dedicated the person is, but it just kind of like draining. You can just use that story and just find one and go deeper instead of like putting all the things like just listing things. So that basically is not listing things. And one thing I just do agree and I want to make sure is like do not list down the things that you already listed in your essay or list in the resume or list in somewhere else. And you're not trying to write an essay to show how amazing you are or how hardworking you are or how like great you are. I mean, everybody's great, but the things like that's too vague. Using something, for example, you say you're a caring person, you have a big heart. What? Actually, you don't need to say you're a caring person, you're a big heart. You just say something, right? You did something, and that people can tell you have a big heart or you're a caring person. That would be more effective than just showing something and writing down. This is also something that I want to mention, and thank you, Clint, for all your advices. And here is like the Q&A session. If you have a more question, you can just ask. And if you want to have like the consultation with me with Clint, you can just submit your application and we can just schedule time to meet with you, but we are limited spots because we're quite busy. So we limited 5 spots to having the consultation with you guys. All right. So Clint, so right now you're helping the students for all the top and IVs. And you also mentioned like you agree with. So there's like a discrimination ongoing, right? And the Yale just to fill the case, right? So what do you think? Do you want to give some suggestion for the Asian students and what they should prepare for the long-term run?
Yeah, I think that this is going to be, a very competitive time, but it's the I think the essays are just going to be even more important right now. Uh, it's always been it's always been hard, but it's going to be even harder now, and it's all going to center around the essays for how you distinguish yourself because I don't think that testing is going to, there's so much going on around testing, but also for Asian students in particular, the testing is very hard to stand out with. So you just really need to concentrate on the essays. I'd say that's if you're thinking about where to put the most time in the whole process, it should all be dedicated to the essays.
Okay. And by the way, they have to do more activity to make sure they have a story to tell in the end, right? Okay, so I'm just kind of curious. This is not related to the seminar. So have you heard about like the Prom 16?
Say that again.
Have you heard about the Prom 16, the policy? Let me explain to you. It's like one of the policy, and then they want to change the education, like the like administration way. The rule will be like, we give the certain percentage to, like say Asian or certain percentage to the different race. So they don't really want to just, choose student based on the scores or their, if they're outstanding or not. They just, want to focus on the percentage. How do you think about that?
I'm really not sure how this is going to play out because I thought when Harvard won their discrimination case that was going to decide the future of this and that it was just going to be decided in favor of the schools that are biased against Asian students. I think it seemed like the way that the Harvard case ended that was going to keep going, but with this new Yale case, uh, I really can't predict how that's going to play out. Uh, Also, the Department of Justice is doing a lot related to um, the universities right now. So it's kind of hard to predict what the next few years are going to be like.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you for your sharing. And I think, as long as we just shooting the goal and find out the passion and do what you really love to do, actually the policy stuff, well, they will affect maybe, but because nobody can control. So what we can control is to focusing on ourselves and to focus on the stories, focus on the essay, focus on how to, write essay, how to make the storytelling to be better and better. So if you still freshman or enter freshman, I really recommend you guys to start critical reading and writing to improve your essay writing, and that's going to be a core skill in the high school year and a college year and even in your life. So pay more attention to the essay. And even your STEM major direction, I still believe like the liberal art part can give you more credit and boost your application as well. And thank you so much, Clint, for your time and for sharing your opinion and experience with us.
Sure.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Bye.